Hi, everyone. Welcome. We will get started in a minute, just give everybody a chance to join us, get settled in. And if you're just joining and you want to say a hello in the chat, let us know where you're joining from, your connection to Safe Routes to School. Please feel free to do that while we wait for people to roll in. Thanks for being here. Happy January. Happy Lunar New Year. If we haven't seen you since December, I guess. So it's nice to be back. I hope everybody has or has been having a nice winter, nice January. And I'll give people a few more minutes and then we will jump right into talking about plans and policies. This seems to be a pretty popular topic, so I'm excited to dive in with you all. And again, if you're just joining us, feel free to say hello in the chat box. Let us know where you're joining from, your connection to Safe Routes to School. I always like to get a sense of where everybody is coming from. There's always a nice range on these. So please go ahead and say hello in the chat. And I'll give people one more minute and then we will get started. All right, so I assume that other people will be jumping on later, which is fine. We'll go ahead and get started, and those of us who join later can catch up with us. So welcome to our third Colorado Safe Routes to School webinar series. So we are continuing the fun this year with some new topics related to both Colorado Safe Routes to School, but this can also be relevant to other places that have Safe Routes to School programs. So thanks so much for joining us. Today we'll be talking all about Safe Routes to School plans and policies. So making Safe Routes to School official in your community. Most of you, I think, are familiar with us, but for those of you who are new to Safe Routes Partnership, we are a national organization working to support safe walking and rolling, both to schools and also everyday destinations, whether it's parks, libraries, grocery stores, and improving the health and well-being of people of all races, income levels, abilities, disabilities, and building thriving and healthy communities for everyone. So for those of you who are new to Safe Routes to School, welcome. For those of you who might be joining us and have been with us for a while, nice to see you all. So I'm Corey Johnson, the Safe Routes Partnership. I'm our Program and Engagement Manager. I'm based in Washington, D.C. Like I mentioned, feel free to say hello in the chat box. Thank you for letting us know where you're coming from, your connection to Safe Routes. And also, if you have anything new or noteworthy going on in Safe Routes to School in your work, feel free to share that too. So any program highlights, upcoming events, just things that you want to share or celebrate, please use the chat box to share your thoughts, your ideas, your resources, your celebrations. I think the chat box is a great way for us to continue to connect with you. So any Safe Routes highlights, newsworthy moments, anything you want to celebrate or share, go ahead and add that to the chat box if you would like to. And we will go ahead and just keep things moving. So I want to start out with a quick poll, since we're talking about Safe Routes to School plans and policies. And I want to get a sense from you all of what this work has looked like for you, in the past, currently, maybe some future prospects. I know that people are in lots of different places when it comes to Safe Routes to School plans and policies. And so I'm just curious to hear from you all. I'm gonna go ahead and launch this poll. If any of you all have standalone Safe Routes to School plans in your school district, in your town, your city, your county. And when I say standalone Safe Routes to School plans, I mean one that's not included in a larger plan. So it's not a part of a Vision Zero plan or a Complete Streets policy or a comprehensive plan, but it's a Safe Routes to School standalone plan. So just something for Safe Routes to School programs. So I will give people a few more seconds to answer our poll question. Take about 10 more seconds. And again, these are standalone Safe Routes to School plans, so not one that's included as part of another plan. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our poll here and share the results. So it looks like there's actually a good chunk of you who do have standalone Safe Routes to School plans in your communities. A lot of people don't, and then some people aren't sure. If you do have a standalone Safe Routes to School plan and you want to add a bit more about it in the chat, share it in the chat, feel free to do that as well. I just wanted to get a sense of how things are looking in your communities when it comes to Safe Routes to School plans. So go ahead and stop sharing that. And I'm going to move into our second poll question for today, which is, so if you don't have a standalone Safe Routes to School plan, do you have a Safe Routes to School, policies or provisions that have been incorporated into an existing plan? So for example, is Safe Routes to School mentioned in a comprehensive plan or a bike and pedestrian plan, Vision Zero plan? So you might not have like your own Safe Routes to School plan, but has it been incorporated into something that already exists? So again, I'll give people a few minutes to let us know how Safe Routes to School has or has not been added into a plan that might already exist. Again, if you're not sure, totally fine. I know people are kind of in different places when it comes to plans and policies. So take 10 more seconds. Just taking a look at the chat here. We have everybody from Colorado, California, Pennsylvania. I think I saw Hawaii representing, Canada, Portland, Washington. All right, so I'll go ahead and end this poll and share our results. And so again, it's a mix, right? So we have some people who've had Safe Routes to School incorporated into comprehensive plans, bike ped plans, some Vision Zero, wellness policies. We'll talk about that being a really good potential policy opportunity for you all. Complete streets, and a whole lot of you who just aren't sure. And you know what, being unsure is actually probably more of the norm. I think when it comes to plans and policies and figuring out which plans exist and what's out there, it can be kind of confusing. And you might not even know that there's a plan that exists or that Safe Routes to School is included in that. So I totally get the people who just might not be sure what's actually out there. All right, so thanks for sharing that feedback. And we're gonna go ahead and get started by, oopsies, went forward there. We're going to go ahead and get started by talking about why we're actually talking about Safe Routes to School plans and policies in the first place. So why is this important? Why is this a topic we wanted to bring up in our webinar series? So, first off, there's a lot of funding momentum, both when it comes to Safe Routes to School in general and also Safe Routes to School planning. So there are actually some planning requirements that are linked to grant funding. So, federal funding, they might ask for, or state funding, people might ask for active transportation plan or a comprehensive plan or other plans that might be linked to a grant that you might be applying for. So as a part of this larger funding conversation with the new infrastructure bill and the money that's coming into infrastructure projects, planning has been a part of that conversation as well. There's also cultural momentum. So just renewed focus on health and wellness, on active transportation, right? On building communities where we're able to actually walk and roll and bike around. Community connectivity, so being able to, get to each other easily, being able to get to everyday destinations, whether it's a school, park, library, grocery store. That's been a part of, I think, some of our collective consciousness, especially, after coming out of the height of the pandemic. And also climate and the environment. So, thinking about climate change, climate justice, environmental justice, creating communities where we can walk and roll and not have to be so car dependent is also connected to some of these cultural changes around how we view the climate and environment. And then lastly, community engagement. So community engagement is a large part of, or I guess if it's a good planning process, should be a large part of creating plans. I think the plans are created, the best ones are created with feedback from community members. And so, we just wanted to acknowledge that that community engagement is another part of planning that is really integral and important. So for those of you who are in Colorado and who have been applying for the Colorado CDOT's Transportation Safe Routes to School grants, I just did want to give a little bit of Colorado context. This is our Colorado webinar series. So for those of you who are applying for those grants, you will receive an extra credit point for encouraging walking and biking if you reference the school wellness policy, if you have a school wellness policy. For infrastructure applicants, the grant asks about complete streets policies or resolutions, but doesn't offer extra credit. And CDOT does not fund planning projects, so your projects must be ready to implement. So again, those of you who are in Colorado looking at CDOT grants, just keep in mind that you will receive an extra credit point for a school wellness policy that encourages walking and biking. You might be asked about a complete streets policy or resolution, but there are no grants that are specifically for planning projects. So please keep that in mind. And those of you who might be in other communities and other states, I definitely reach out to your local transportation department to figure out what the different planning requirements are when it comes to your grant funding. So I wanted to jump into the benefits of policies and plans. And again, I think that a lot of you all know this already, but it's always good to reiterate. So a policy and a plan, it's a great way to institutionalize a good idea, reach more people. Policies and plans lead to more consistent implementation, helps create accountability, right? So saying like, we're going to do this or we want to do this, and you actually, go ahead and do it. And it's something that's a bit more, it's written a bit more formal. And it can also establish relationships and responsibilities. So figuring out kind of who's responsible for what is an important part of the planning process and a big benefit to getting plans and policies in place. So thinking about what kind of policies you might be looking into, what kinds of policies exist out there. There are school board policies, local state laws, resolutions, language around zoning, so school zoning, housing, zoning for commercial versus residential, and even like contract language. So there are lots of different policy examples that exist out there. Again, depending on, the community, project that you're working on, there's a lot of ways that policies can be developed and implemented in your community. So thinking about different policy levels, for our conversation today, we'll be focusing mainly on policy levels at the school level, the school district level, or the town, city, or county level. We know that there are other policies, regional policies, state policies, federal policies, and those are often, bigger challenges to tackle. It just involves more people, more processes. And so we really think about, asking you all where you can make the most impact. And starting small is always a great idea. I think that sometimes dealing with some of the larger policies, larger bureaucracy can be a bit overwhelming, whereas a school or a school district might be more doable. You might be able to have more of an impact, especially in the short term. So as you consider what policies and plans you want to go after, think about school level, school district level, or what you can do in your town, your county, or your city. So to start off thinking about, how do you tackle a safe routes to school plan and policy? How do you start one? How do you get one incorporated into a larger plan? We suggest doing your research first. And those of you who are familiar with our Colorado Community Engagement Toolkit, this is our document we put together last year that outlines a community engagement framework and highlights community engagement best practices. It has a lot of really great tools, resources, and additional information to help you with your community engagement. And as a part of the community engagement framework, I think you all have seen this before, those of you who have been on these webinars, but for those of you who are new, research is a really important part of community engagement. And I referenced community engagement earlier, talking about why plans and policies are important and why they're beneficial. And, I think that looking at plans and policies is a great way to actually research the community where you're working, to see what plans and policies are out there so that you know, or what's not out there so that you know what to do next. So research really helps inform your next steps when it comes to creating a plan or safe routes to school policy, or figuring out how to update or revise an existing plan. So first step is always to do that research and figure out what exactly you're working with. So as far as getting started, I would actually get started by, again, doing a policy scans, figuring out which plans and policies already exist. Are there plans on a school level? Are there school district plans? Are there town, city, or county plans? So those of you who kind of mentioned before, like you weren't sure what plans exist in your community, doing a preliminary policy scan can be a great way to figure out what exists, what doesn't exist. You might find that there's a lot out there or there's not a lot out there. Again, it really depends on your community, your situation, but taking some time to figure out what already exists is a great way to just get started. So as a part of your policy plan, it's also important to think about how planning and policy works in your community. So how do decisions get made? Who are the main players? We all know people who are, the main decision makers in your community. So, is there a town council, city council? Is it a school board? Is it the school administration? Other elected officials? How do the decisions get made? Who are the main players? So who are those people who do have both decision-making power and also influence over how decisions get made, and figuring out, again, who those people are so that you are familiar with the whole planning and policy landscape in your community. And again, starting small is a great way to do this because it's much easier to figure out how this works in a school as opposed to how this works in, big county or big city. So you can kind of do your research based on the scale that you feel comfortable with and that's most realistic for your community. So thinking about the main players, in a school or at a school district level, you're probably thinking about school administrators and the school board as people who kind of have that ultimate decision-making power, right? These are people who can, help approve a safe routes to school plan or a wellness policy, or a policy about being able to allow bikes or skateboards on school campus. A lot of that decision-making power rests with official decision-making power rests with school administration or the school board. Of course, there are other people who are involved in the process. Parents and caregivers hold a lot of power and influence, students, staff. So figure out, again, who's a part of the planning process already in your community. And I think that you all as Safe Routes coordinators and practitioners can definitely consider yourselves as main players as well if you want to influence some of these decisions around safe routes to school planning and policy. On a town, city, or county level, you're probably looking more at elected officials. Again, town council, city council, I don't know if you might have a town manager, county executive, people who, again, have that official decision-making power when it comes to safe routes to school plans, transportation plans, Vision Zero plans, complete streets policies. These are people who might be involved in that process on a larger scale, so looking outside of the school district. And of course, you have, planners, engineers, public health, they might be partners, nonprofit partners can definitely be a part of, the equation when it comes to who the main players are. Also community organizations who might be, advocating for, for certain policies or just a part of the community engagement process. Even lawyers, right? Figuring out, what's legal, what's not legal, what types of language to use. All these people might play a role thinking about planning and policy at the town, city, and county level. And of course, as you get to know the main players, you also want to know a bit about, what they care about, what their motivations are, if their priorities align with yours, and how can you work together to reach a common goal? So I think that we know that there are a lot of people who are a part of these policymaking process, planning process, and sometimes their priorities don't necessarily align with ours. They might want something that's not a big priority, something that might not be related to safe routes to school, for example. And I think that if we, have to work together to develop plans and policies, we have to be able to come to a compromise and figure out who wants what. So a lot of planning and policy is really about, that relationship building piece and figuring out people's, motivations, what they care about, and then figuring out where your motivations align. So if, for example, transportation cost is an issue for somebody, as a safe routes to school practitioner, you might say, encouraging walking and biking and rolling is a great way to cut down on transportation costs, because more people won't have to, you won't have to spend money on school buses if students can walk and roll to school. So can we create more plans and policies that support encouraging walking and rolling, better infrastructure for walking and rolling? That can be a way to kind of come to a compromise, if that's something that somebody is motivated by. So definitely, take time to figure out who's motivated by what, who wants what, and then work those networking skills, those people skills, to figure out how your priorities might be aligned. And I'd also suggest, just looking online, looking on social media, using your network, seeing, kind of who knows who in the community, going and seeing if your local, transportation agency, health agency, school district, if they have any plans and policies online, whether it's a wellness plan or a transportation plan, just see what's out there. And again, you might not find anything, or it might be super outdated. So you can also always just reach out to an elected official's office if that's something that you, would be comfortable doing and know how to do, or also just ask. Sometimes I can't find a certain plan or policy, so I'll just, ask who I think has the information. They either provide it for me or send me to the right person. So if you want to know if there's a safe routes to school plan in your community or transportation plan in your community, starting with your local agency staff or a community partner can be a great way to figure out what things look like. So just asking. The worst that they could say is no, or that they're not sure, but it's always worth the ask. And then just some additional considerations when you're thinking about researching community plans and policies. Keep in mind that staff and elected official turnover can impact plans and policies. People go in and out of office and sometimes have different priorities. I think this is also one of the benefits of having a plan or a policy in place. It's something that can exist, hopefully, beyond the service of an elected official who, again, might be in and out of office or change priorities. Also, communities evolve. So like I mentioned before, there's like this cultural momentum in some communities right now around walking and rolling and climate justice. And so being able to incorporate those moments and those concerns, those ideas into plan and policy is just something else to consider. And finally, I think the fundamentals really stay consistent. So, people need transportation, education, housing, food, recreation, some sort of joy in our lives. So, how can you incorporate, while you understand there are communities that are changing, people's basic needs stay the same. So how can you include those in your plans? I'm going to go ahead and take a quick look at the chat. Just see if there's anybody who has any questions. Jennifer is asking if there's anybody who has a policy within a school district, would you mind sharing what that looks like? So if any of you all have district policies or other plans or policies that you don't mind sharing or have a link to, please feel free to include that in the chat, and I'll also save the chat and send it out after the webinar is over if you miss it in the chat box. So any district level policies, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get them out to you at the end. All right, so like I mentioned before, starting small is a really great way to go when you're deciding to embark on a safe routes to school plan and policy journey. Like I mentioned, starting small is just easier because there's less red tape to work with, less players to work with, and it can just be a way for you to have more impact as opposed to trying to tackle a large scale plan or policy. So thinking about an individual school, you might want to start with reviewing a school's current policies, reviewing a school handbook, even looking at current school data, travel tallies, your health data, anecdotes from parents, and also gathering new data. Maybe if you need to do additional surveys or observations, walk audits, students. So if you're making the case for having a school-based safe routes to school plan or incorporating safe routes to school into a school wellness policy, for example, school. Having those data points and showing that this is something that our school community actually wants and needs is a great way to help you get support for including safe routes to school in a plan. And again, even something like a school handbook, I know that it's not, a county comprehensive plan or a bike ped plan, but a school handbook, if it's something that, communities or that school communities, work with and, take seriously, that can be a great first step into getting safe routes to school, embedded into a school-based policy. So school handbook does not hurt your cause. So school-based policies can be everything from the school wellness policy. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with school wellness committees. Some of you might have school wellness policies. Policies around bike and skateboard use. I know there are some schools I've talked to where biking and skateboard use are not allowed because the principal said no. So is that something that can be, included in your policy work? Drop-off and pickup procedures could also be a school-based policy, recommended routes and travel plans, physical activity guidelines. So again, these can all exist in a school on a school basis. I think the important part of this is that, it really depends on the community that you're working with. And there's some schools where, policies are pretty lax, other schools where school administration, draws a hard line and has a lot of policies. So that's important. That's why it's important to think about learning about how policymaking and planning works in your community, because that will inform how you go about this planning process. And then on a school-based level, thinking about who can help you, either trying to find a plan or put together a plan, who should be reaching out to. School administration, I know that they're super busy, but they are people who are available who can help you if they have the ability to do so. PTAs or parent caregiver groups, they might have information about, plans and policies, parent handbooks, student handbooks, definitely worth reaching out to them. School counselors, school support staff might be able to, provide information if there's a school wellness policy. The Safe Routes to School Committee, of course, you have a Safe Routes to School team or committee, wellness committee. They can also help you get information beyond your planning and policy team. And of course, people like crossing guards, bus drivers, while they might not be the ultimate decision makers in planning and policy, they definitely have a lot of information and can also be great allies and advocates for a Safe Routes to School plan. And as far as taking action, I just say, find your team. So get that Safe Routes to School committee. If you have one, rally everybody together. If you want to start one, creating a plan is a great opportunity to actually start a Safe Routes to School committee or school wellness committee. Again, your PTA, your PTO. Decide what your ask is. So what do you actually want out of your plan or policy? Do you want for students to be able to be allowed to ride bikes to school or skateboard to school? Do you want better policies around, encouraging walking and biking or rolling? What is it that you actually want? Show the need for what you want. So again, some of those data points could be helpful along with, anecdotes, stories from students, families, reviewing sample policy language. So if there's examples from other communities that have enacted similar policies, can you bring those in as examples? And then draft your own policy language. And again, this will depend on your particular school community, your district, and how things work. But this is these are a few steps you can take if you're trying to develop a Safe Routes to School plan or even update something that might already exist. So that was for the school level. At a district level, it'll actually look pretty similar. So again, just on a little bit of a larger scale. So looking at what currently exists, what policies exist, what data exists, if there are any district level priorities. So for example, promoting health and wellness, if that's a district priority, that's a great rationale that you can use for incorporating Safe Routes to School into a plan or policy. Okay, you say at the district, we want to promote health and wellness. Safe Routes to School is a great way to do that. So let's put it into, our district wellness plan, or let's put it into a transportation plan. So you're really actually helping to identify where Safe Routes to School might be a solution, so is the solution to health concerns or bus driver shortage or transportation cost. Safe Routes to School can be a really solution-oriented program. And I think that working with the school district, who oftentimes are asking for what is the need or how is this actually solving a problem, you can kind of use that angle to get Safe Routes to School either as a standalone plan or incorporated into an existing plan. Somebody mentioned wellness policies earlier. I think that a wellness policy is a great plan to think about kind of going after first. District wellness plans support student wellness, physical activity, might include things like nutrition, mental health, general health services, immunizations, injuries. And a lot of districts are required by federal law to have them for participating in the federal nutrition program. So district wellness policies probably do exist. If you can find them or not is another question, but they probably do exist somewhere out there in your district universe. Again, just ask if you can't find it, but they are widely present and are also historically weak on physical activity. So there are lots of opportunities to incorporate language around walking and rolling. So again, if you're looking for a plan that might be a bit easier to tackle or to incorporate safe routes to school, a district wellness policy can be a great way to go. This is an example of the school district policy from Town of Center. Those of you who were on our webinar last fall in October, this is a small community, small rural community in Colorado, and they incorporated safe routes to school into their school district policy. So their policy says that the district will promote walking and biking to school through activities like Walking Wednesdays, walk and bike to school events, curricular delivery, parent education, crossing guards, and collaboration in the community Safe Routes to School Coalition. So there's a specific, there's an explicit reference to safe routes to school in their school district wellness policy. So if you're looking to include safe routes to school in your district policy, language like this could be really helpful. And again, it's linked to that idea of promoting opportunities for more physical activity. So that's where the safe routes to school connection comes in. So that's a great example from Town of Center in Colorado. And then, of course, there are also guidance authorization policies. So if you need authorization for things like walking school buses, bike trains, walk and roll events, recommended routes, education, physical activity, or even shared use, those can also be incorporated into safe routes to school plans and policies. So again, I'll keep reiterating, figure out how things work in your community, what plans already exist, who the decision makers are, and then really go from there. That'll help you determine what you need to do next when it comes to these steps around getting a plan and policy in place or updated. So I will go ahead and check the chat one more time. I see people adding information, which is great. Thank you. And again, if people have plans and policies, drop them in the chat and I will definitely share them out in my follow-up email. I see a few district wellness policies in here. Somebody put the Spare the Air policy resource. That's a really good one. And if anybody also wants to email me any policies or documents, I can also give you my email at the end. Feel free to do that, and I can share them in my follow-up email with you all. And I will be sharing the webinar PowerPoint. Yes. A clarification on what guidance and authorization policies are. So this is just, giving somebody the authority to do something or providing guidance on how to do something. So, giving people the authority to have a walk and roll event or do bike education, guidelines around what bike education might look like, guidelines around what a recommended route to school, that can be included, guidelines on physical activity. There are some schools that are trying to limit recess. I know I've worked in schools where they're trying to, to limit recess and limit physical opportunities for physical activity. Those are things that could be included in guidance and authorization policies. And if anybody else has any other examples of either guidance and authorization policies that you've seen, that you have in place in your community, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And again, it depends on your school district and what's happening in your community, what those policies might look like. And again, those of you, I know some of you have already been sharing this in the chat, but if you've been able to find success in creating a school or district policy, I'm curious how you were able to do that, what was easy, what was challenging. So if you have any other, tips, anecdotes, strategies, feel free to drop those in the chat along with the other resources that you're sharing. So I won't spend too much time on this, but if you do want to share a bit about how things have worked in your community, please feel free to do so in the chat box. And we also have some more resources around working with school districts. I'll share these out after the webinar as well. We just give you some more, ideas and resources for how to develop district policies, who to talk to, how to work with the school board, how to work with superintendents. Again, it's not always an easy process and can be a bit confusing. So if you want more guidance around that, I will share those resources as well. All right, so moving on. So we already started by talking about, trying to start small. Next, it's a really good idea too to also just work with what's already there. So I think that some of you already mentioned that there are some policies and there are some plans and policies that do exist in your communities, whether it's a comprehensive plan, a bike plan, pedestrian plan, Vision Zero plan, a complete streets policy, a safe school zone policy. There might be things that already exist in your community. So starting with what's actually already there and trying to incorporate safe routes to school into that plan sometimes can be easier than trying to start a whole new safe routes to school plan from scratch. So if you want to, kind of take another angle and try to incorporate safe routes into something that exists, that's another way to go. So if you're in a smaller community, some of these plans might actually not exist or might not be in development. So I know I've worked with some really small towns where they don't have a bike ped plan or a complete streets policy. That's not something that exists. It might be a community where, a planner is spread out across lots of different, communities, or might not be a designated planner for the community. So it's fine if you might not have a plan that exists in your community. Again, all communities are different. But sometimes plans are required for state or federal funding, as I mentioned before. So I'd honestly just connect again with town manager, town council, your planner, engineer, public works, just anybody who might be a part of that process and figure out what exists, what doesn't exist, and how can safe routes to school be a part of whatever is happening moving forward. You can also look for opportunities to give public input. So sometimes people create plans and they'll want to hear back from the community. What do you want? Do you want bike lanes? Do you want, what kind of housing do you want? Where do you want to put schools? So I look for opportunities for you to give input, for your students' families to give input in a planning process. And also, honestly, for smaller communities, it might be easier to get things done because you're working on a smaller scale, and there might be less red tape. So again, not saying that's true across all communities, but that small scale could actually be in your advantage as far when it comes to actually trying to get plans in place and approved. So if you're in a small community and you might not have a whole lot of plans or don't know what plans exist, totally okay, you can still get things done. Again, for larger communities, larger cities, larger counties, again, look online, ask around, connect with your planner if you haven't done so already. Same thing with public input, look for opportunities to give input on different plans that you might see. If you see that there's a Vision Zero plan in your county or an update to a comprehensive plan in your community, where can you give input? Is there a survey? Are there public forums? Are there town halls? How can you make sure that you're really there advocating for including safe routes to school in that plan? Also sign up for email lists. I know that my neighborhood here in DC is going through a neighborhood redesign process. And I actually found out about it because there was a flyer that was pasted on a bakery window or something. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is happening. Maybe I should go ahead and, fill out the survey and go to one of these community forums and see what's happening. And I signed up for the email list. Now I get regular updates. So if that exists, sign up for an email list just to keep updated on what's happening. And then spread the word. I think that sometimes planning processes can be shrouded in secrecy or can kind of seem a bit overwhelming or confusing. So if you see something where people are asking for input, share it with your school, with your families, with your administration, with students. Let people know hey, our local agency, they're asking for our input about how our community is going to develop. Let's show that safe routes to school is a priority. Let's fill out that survey, attend a meeting if we can. So spread the word to others so that you can help involve more people in the process. So thinking about different plans that might exist in your community, I think that some of you might be familiar with these. Some of you, this might be new information, but a comprehensive plan is something that might exist in your community. And it's just a blueprint for future development. So it reflects values and opportunities for change. It can help guide future policy decisions and investments, and it kind of gives that overall long-term vision for what your community is going to look like. And it can include everything from transportation to public facilities, housing, which is a big topic right now, recreation, tourism, health. So if you're doing your research, see if your community has a comprehensive plan. Safe routes to school can be put into a comprehensive plan as well. You can include language around, steps to reducing speed limits, school zone guidance, school siting. That's a big one. I know here I've seen a lot of schools where they just place a school off a highway, an area that's like totally not walkable or rollable. So can you incorporate school siting policies into a comprehensive plan so that schools are actually put in places where kids can walk and roll instead of having to take a bus? Trail and park connections, even just general support for safe routes to school programs. So saying that this community will support and encourage students walking and rolling and safe routes to school programs. That could be a possible integration in a comprehensive plan. Bike ped plan, something very similar. It's the planning process for walking and biking. It might be incorporated into a comprehensive plan, or might be a part of a transportation plan. And again, same opportunities for integrating safe routes to school, including support for safety education, support for walking and rolling events, walking and rolling policies, steps for, how to incorporate walking and biking in school zones and along school routes. So if you have a bike ped plan in the works or out there, safe routes to school integration is a great thing to think about. This is an example from Fort Collins. I have here highlighted, there's a safe routes to school program that is incorporated into the city plan. Says that they want to continue on with the safe routes to school program. So again, lots of opportunities for like figuring out what this looks like and where to put safe routes to school. So it can be a comprehensive plan, it can be a bike ped plan. Vision Zero plan or policy can be another opportunity. So Vision Zero is just a movement to eliminate all traffic deaths and all traffic injuries and fatalities by a certain date. I think here in DC ours was 2024. We probably need to revise that, but Vision Zero plans are another opportunity to include safe routes to school. They typically include some sort of action plan related to education, engineering, prioritizing students as vulnerable road users, investing in school infrastructure improvements, and supporting bike and pedestrian safety. So this is an example from Montgomery County, Maryland. Their Vision Zero program actually incorporates safe routes to school. So they have safe routes to school engineering projects as a part of their Vision Zero plan. So they include why they do this, a work plan for 2022, work plan for 2023. So this is, a part of their countywide Vision Zero plan. So again, all of these I'll email out afterwards if you're just looking for like sample language of what this looks like, but here's how safe routes to school can be incorporated into a Vision Zero plan. And we also have a safe routes to school and Vision Zero report for those of you who are Vision Zero communities or might be becoming Vision Zero communities. It just offers more resources for how to integrate Vision Zero and safe routes to school. But again, that education and engineering part is a real opportunity for creating your Vision Zero action plan and incorporating safe routes to school. And then of course there are complete streets policies. So complete streets are just streets that are designed and operated for people for the use and mobility of people who are walking, biking, rolling, riding transit, and using mobility devices. So for those of you who might be in communities where you have a complete streets policy or looking to create a complete streets policy, safe routes to school can definitely link into that as well. It can include things like speed limits, school crossings, things about signals, signage, and making it a priority to incorporate walking and rolling infrastructure near schools, both for the complete streets policy and also for a safe school zone policy. So again, there might be like some overlap with some of these too, like, what can go in a pedestrian plan can also go in a, complete streets policy or a comprehensive plan. So while there is some specific language for all of these, there's really a lot of overlap. So again, it's like, what works best for your community? What makes the most sense? I wouldn't spend too much time getting caught up on like, which plan should I go after and how can safe routes to school fit into this? Like, just figure out what exists in your community, where you can slot in safe routes to school, what makes the most sense, where you can kind of gain that, that support, where the momentum is, and go from there. So whether it's a safe school zone policy, wellness policy, comprehensive plan, there are lots of options for you to explore. With the Safe School Zone policy, there's actually a great one in Charlotte, North Carolina. Their DOT, also called CDOT, has a Safe School Zone policy and implementation guide that includes guidance around school zones, crossings. It references the Safe Routes to School program, and it actually helps guide their school safety zone committee, which is made up of somebody from Charlotte DOT, the local school district, and their Safe Routes to School coordinator. So they really use that. They really use their school safety zone policy to help guide what safe route to school looks like. So just another example of how plans and policies are implemented and designed in other areas across the country. All right, I'm going to stop again, check the chat box. And again, thank you so much to those of you who are providing your resources, your thoughts, your ideas. I really appreciate it. Lots of great plans and policies that are being shared. Let's see. Oh, somebody mentioned children's hospitals having great school age data. Yes, that's another really untapped resource. Looking at hospital data related to fatalities, serious injuries. Public health department might have data on food, nutrition, physical activity. So reaching out to health partners is a great way to get that data to help support why this plan or this policy is necessary. So thanks to who brought that up. I think it's Rosina. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, and we will keep going here. So the last step is really to engage a range of stakeholders and decision makers. So again, we know elected officials are important, school boards are important, administration's important, but there are also other people in the community who really have a lot of sway and influence in how plans and policies get made. I know I mentioned this before, but this is the IAP2 spectrum of public participation. It can help help you figure out how to work with people in different parts of a planning process, whether you're just informing people of something that's happening, like, we're creating a comprehensive plan, all the way to collaborating with the public and, having them be a real integral part of the planning public participation process. Colorado also has a great youth engagement continuum, which is how to, involve young people in that process. So definitely take a look at that if you're thinking about, how plans get made, how decisions get made, and who's involved on what level. So thinking about other decision makers, other stakeholders, students obviously are super important. These can be, youth groups, youth transportation councils, student government associations, sports teams, older siblings. I'd say especially high school students have a lot of stake in some of these plans and policies, and really have a lot of influence and a lot of sway. And the idea is to really connect your plan or your policy to some sort of relevant issue. So, for young people, it might be climate justice, or it might be having walkable, rowable communities. People might be concerned about traffic fatalities, or driver's ed, or micromobility, right? Having, being able to use scooters and skateboards, or creating more youth-centered spaces. So if you're engaging young people, especially high school students, around, some of these plans and policies related to safe routes to school, how can you connect to things they already care about? So they care about climate, or care about walking and hanging out with their friends, or care about, feeling unsafe walking to school. Try to connect your plan to something that actually they care about and that makes sense in their lives. Parents and caregivers, same thing. Your parent PTA groups, PTO groups, school volunteers, even former parents. So we know that, there are kids who age out and go on to the next school. Parents might not have kids at that school, but who still might be involved or care about the school community. Could also be great allies in your planning process and policy making process. And again, connect it to relevant issues, whether it's school traffic congestion, cost of transportation, cost of gas because you're driving your kid back and forth to school, traffic safety in general, school siting and redistricting, which can always be a hot button topic, but people have a lot of opinions and show up for those conversations. How can you use that to garner support for safe routes to school? Also mental health and well-being. Again, more of an emerging conversation over the past few years. How can we create environments and plans and policies to really support the well-being of our whole students, not just physically, but mentally as well. Community members, neighbors, bike ped advocates, crossing guards, bus drivers, business owners can also be a part of safe routes to school plans. Neighbors can be a big one, especially when it comes to policies around, drop off, pick up, parking, that doesn't just affect the school community, but can also affect, the neighbors around the school, where there are these long car loop lines and people parking in neighborhoods, or you hear all kinds of things. I'm sure that you all know what this sounds like and looks like, but these are other people to engage in safe routes to school plans and policies. And again, connect things to relevant issues, whether it's speeding, neighborhood planning, congestion is always a big one, parking, especially parking in neighborhood streets. That's how you can really help get people on board. And then other school staff besides school administration, who's the support staff, paraprofessionals, arrival and dismissal monitors, custodians, front office staff who might be fielding some of these calls about, bus issues or students walking to school, school nurses, social workers, school counselors would be able to kind of provide that information about, mental health and well-being. They might serve on a wellness committee. Those are other people who can really help engage, who can really, help advocate for some of these school plans and policies. And again, connect to what they care about, whether it's bullying, health, mental health, facilities maintenance, student injuries in general, if there are kids who are, getting hurt on the way to school, even parent and family engagement. Those are all things that those other school staff might care about, and a way to connect safe routes to school to what it is that they're already working on. And if you have any other people who you think would be good to engage in safe routes to school plans and policies, other people who you might have engaged who aren't on this list, feel free to add that in the chat too. I just put a short list, but I'm sure that there are plenty of other people who are out there who might have some thoughts or ideas about, safe routes to school plans and policies. Sports teams, coaches, coaching staff. I know that can be one thing. Like the physical activity piece. PE staff, yes. Even policies again around physical activity, can be a great way to, kind of involve PE teachers, in creating some of these policies. The local housing authority, also a big one. Transportation and housing are often linked. So if there are any housing partners you have in your area, or even like local housing developments or housing communities where you might do a remote drop off and pick up, or you might have a gathering site for a walk and roll to school day. I think that those housing partners can be a big part of this as well. So again, continue to add your ideas to the chat box, please. And I'll just review these last few resources really quickly. So along with doing all those other things, so starting small, doing your research, connecting with your main players and stakeholders, explore the resources. There's also a lot out there to kind of help you unpack what planning looks like in your community. We worked on a policy workbook a few years ago in collaboration with Change Lab Solutions. So this is a workbook that's a free online tool. Again, I will send out the link in my follow-up email, and it really helps you create a policy that's tailored to your needs. It includes different policy provisions from beginner, intermediate, and advanced policies. It also addresses liability concerns. That can also be a big part of creating a safe route to school plan or policy. Well, I'm afraid of a kid, getting hit if we allow kids to skateboard to school. So some of those liability concerns, which are very real, are also part of this policy workbook. So definitely take a look at that. We offer ideas for beginner policies. Again, things like school wellness policies, student handbooks, creating a safe routes to school team or task force, traffic education might be some of the beginner policies. Intermediate can include things like crossing guard programs, student arrival and dismissal policies, no idling policies. I know that some of you on this webinar might have been a part of no idling policies, allowing bikes, scooters, skateboards on school campuses, bike parking, student transportation departments. All of those could be intermediate policies. And then advanced things like busing or school design or school siting or zoning, which require probably, more people, lots of considerations, lots of different moving pieces related to some of those more advanced policies. Again, it's not to say don't tackle them. It's just that working on school siting A school citing policy might be a bit harder or more involved in working on like a school wellness policy, for example. So just figure out again, what makes sense for your community, what makes sense for you and your capacity, and then, move on from there. And of course, the Safe Routes to School policy. We have our Safe Routes to School policy resource page on our website, which has general policies around Safe Routes to School, funding, staffing, how equity is incorporated into policies, and just other general information about how to incorporate Safe Routes to School, either into a standalone policy or plan or into something that already exists. So again, if you have any other resources or ideas, continue to share in the chat box. I'm really excited to kind of go through and dig into everything you all have shared, because I've just been seeing, the chat box just going and want to look at everything you've shared. So if you have others, please do add them into the chat box. And I will go ahead and take the last few minutes if there are any final questions, ideas. Let's see. Carlotta was saying that liability concerns are arguably one of the biggest barriers to our ability to get walking school buses and bike trains started. Yes, we hear this a lot, and it's actually why I also mentioned is who you should kind of like involve and who the main players are when it comes to walking and rolling. Like lawyers are great people to have in your pocket, connect with, figure out like what those liability concerns are, what some of the legal considerations are, and see if see if they have any guidance or expertise that can be offered. And again, that policy workbook does include some of those liability concerns, so I definitely take a look at that. And it was actually put together by both lawyers and policy experts. So these are people who have that background and can directly address some of those liability concerns. But we do hear you. I'm going to take a look at the Q&A box as well. How can transit agencies and MPOs establish relationship with schools and school districts to help facilitate safe routes to school plans and policies? Great question. So if anybody's from a transit agency and you're still on the call and you want to, give some ideas for how transit agencies and MPOs can establish relationships with schools, that would be great. I would honestly say just reach out. If there is a Safe Routes to School coordinator in your community, definitely worth reaching out. If there's worth reaching out to the school transportation department, again, if you're from a transit agency or an MPO, reaching out to, people at the district level to kind of see, how you can be involved, how you can work together. A lot of this is honestly just relationship building. So, using your network, reaching out, asking, seeing who might be working in similar spaces, where your priorities might be aligned, and then figuring out how you can work together. But I always say just ask. And even if you ask the wrong person, just have them direct you to the person who you need to be talking to. So whether that's reaching out to a school district or an individual school, I would say just start with the ask. But if anybody else has any other ideas, feel free to add them into the chat. So this is about transit agencies and MPOs establishing relationships with schools and school districts. And also if there's a Safe Routes to School coordinator, great person to reach out to get started with that. What are some examples of funding sources to enforce or implement Safe Routes to School when incorporated into a district wellness policy? So this is from Jordan. Jordan, I don't know if you're talking about like grants related to implementing Safe Routes to School as a part of district wellness policies. I'd assume that with wellness, you might actually want to reach out to some of your public health partners. We have some Safe Routes to School programs that are funded through public health departments, or Safe Routes activities might be funded through local health departments. That could be, one source of funding if you're thinking about, kind of the health and wellness angle. So if anybody else has any other ideas for incorporating for funding sources to implement Safe Routes to School as part of a district wellness policy, that could be one. It could also be tied again to PE teachers, PE curriculum. That could be one idea. But I definitely say check out public health and possibly some of your PE teachers and partners who might be doing some health and wellness work as a part of their school day. Any other questions before we wrap up? Rosina, you asked where can we apply for funding? It depends on what type of funding you're looking for. We do have we did do a funding webinar last fall, which I can also link to if you're looking for specific Safe Routes to School funding. There are also some communities that fund planning grants. So if you want to create a Safe Routes to School plan, there are some communities where those grant funds are available. And again, it depends on your community, your situation. Some communities do that, some states do that, some don't. So it really helps to know what's possible in your community and in your context. So if you have a more specific question, feel free to let me know where you are and I can send you to the right direction and the right resource. All right, so we are at the top of the hour. If I didn't get to your question, I will answer it in a follow-up email. If there are any specific resources you're looking for that I don't have or didn't mention today, feel free to email me as well. But thank you all so much for being so generous with your resources and your information and expertise and knowledge. I can't be everywhere since you all actually are everywhere. I appreciate you kind of filling in the gaps where I don't have them. Just so you know, our next Colorado webinar will be Wednesday, March 8th, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and we'll be talking about partnering with school districts. Those of you who wanted more information on what those partnerships look like, that can be a great webinar for you. It will be featuring Durango, Colorado's wonderful Safe Routes to School program and how they partner with their local school district. So join us there. I will send out a link to that registration page soon. And thank you all for being here. Look out for a follow-up email and survey from me along with the webinar recording and slides. And we will see you all in March. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks.